Hello everyone. Today we will cover Rigvedic society, the Aryans and Rigvedic society. So far we have considered the late Harappan cultures, Chalcolithic and painted graveware cultures. Let us now turn to the evidence from the Vedic texts, which unlike the archaeological evidence that tell us only about the material culture, throw light on the ethnic and cultural identities of people. Because of the references found in the Vedas, the Aryan question is one of the important issues concerning the early history of India. The Aryans. The attempt to write a history of India began when the Europeans colonized India. They compiled the archaeological and literary sources as well as oral traditions. Certain notions, for example, the Aryans were developed and used in the colonial context when many parts of Asia and Africa were under the influence of the European powers. The concept of race was widely prevalent at that time to classify and categorize people. Some of the views reflect the racist ideas of colonial times. The Aryan theory was linked to the blue-eyed white race and its connection with Europeans. Nazis used the Aryan concept for their political agenda, ultimately leading to the Holocaust. The recent studies have established that the word Aryan doesn't denote race, but only refers to the original speakers of Indo-Aryan languages. Philologists study language in oral and written forms of languages based on historical evidence. They use etymology, comparative linguistics, literary criticism, history, and linguistics in their studies. Though the Rigveda is in Sanskrit, about 300 words of the Munda and Dravidian languages have been identified in it, suggesting cultural mix with earlier inhabitants. From the Vedas, it is evident that Aryans used domesticated horses and chariots. Their chariots had spoked wheels and they used bows and arrows. They practiced agriculture and pastoralism. They buried and also cremated the dead. The cult of fire and the use of soma drink were prevalent among the speakers of the Indo-Aryan languages. The home of Indo-Europeans and Indo-Aryans is still a matter of debate. Many scholars are of the view that the Aryans came to India as migrants from Central Asia. It is also believed that several waves of Indo-Aryan migration might have happened. There are several factors which support this hypothesis. The traits of the culture of Aryans cover Eastern Europe and Central Asia, which are geographically interlinked with India and West Asia and Europe. One of the accepted areas of the Aryan home is Eastern Europe, Central Asia, north of the Black Sea. The Bactria margina archaeological complex is closely related to Aryan culture dated to 1900 BCE to 1500 BCE. References to the names of Indo-European languages are found in an inscription dated to 2200 BCE discovered in modern Iraq. Anatolian inscriptions of 1900 to 1700 BCE and Kassite inscriptions of 1600 BCE of Iraq and Mitanni inscriptions of 1400 BCE of Syria. Bhugojgui inscriptions referring to names similar to the Vedic gods 1400 BCE have the common features of the Indo-European languages, but no such inscriptions are found in India. The term Aswa and several other terms in Rigveda have common roots in various Indo-Aryan languages. In the Rigveda, the term Aswa, meaning horse, occurs 215 times and Vrishava, meaning bull, 170 times. Tiger and rhinoceros which are tropical animals, are not mentioned in the Rig Veda. There is no trace of the urban way of life in the Rig Veda. Hence, the identity of Aryans is not correlated with the Harappan culture where there is no evidence for horse. Nowadays, DNA studies are also used for understanding ancient migrations. M17, a genetic marker DNA, is said to have been found among the speakers of Indo-Europeans. Rigvedic culture. Rigvedic Samhita is the earliest text that relates to the early Vedic period. The early Vedic culture is placed between 1500 BCE and 1000 BCE. The political, social, and economic aspects of life of this period are reflected in many hymns. Geography. In the Indian subcontinent, the early Aryans lived in the area of eastern Afghanistan, Pakistan, Punjab, and fringes of western Uttar Pradesh. Dasas and Dasyus. The Rigvedas speak about not only the Aryans but also about the non-Aryan people whom the Aryans encountered in India. When the Rigvedic people moved into India, they came into conflict with people whom they referred to as Dasyus or Dasas. Evidently, the Aryans differentiated themselves from the dark native people who had different cultural practices and sought to maintain their distinction. The Rigveda has references to several other groups. Simyu and Kikkata are grouped with the Dasyus. Sambara, son of Kulitara, is mentioned as a chief with 90 forts or settlements. Varchin was another chief with many troops. The Rigveda mentions the defeat of a chief called Sambara by Dibodasa of the Bharat clan. Polity and political clashes. The concept of polity developed in the Rigvedic time. Various units of habitation and divisions such as the Janas, Vis, Gana, Grama, and Kula are referred to in the Rigveda. The Vedas speak about the Aryans and their enemies and the battles they fought with them. The battles were fought more for cattle and material wealth, and the war booty acquired was shared. They not only fought with the non-Aryans but also fought among themselves. They invoked the support of the gods in their battles. They strongly believed that prayers, sacrifices, and the rituals could offer support in their mundane life. The god Indra is called Purandara, which means destroyer of settlements, which were perhaps fenced or planned townships. The Varatas and Tristu were the ruling Aryan clans who were supported by Vasishtha, the priest. The region of India was named Bharatvarsha after the tribe of Bharatas. The Bharata clan was opposed by 10 chiefs and 5 out of them were Aryans. This battle was known as the Battle of 10 Kings. The battle took place on the banks of the river Purushni, identified with the river Ravi. In this battle, Suda's won and he became important, leading to the dominance of Bharata clan. The Purus were one of the defeated clans. The Purus and Bharatas formed an alliance and later they formed Kuru clan. Later the Kurus allied with Panchalas and established their control over the upper Ganga valley. Social divisions. The Vedic people distinguished themselves from the non-Aryan people. Varna was the term used by Aryans to refer to color and category. The Rigveda refers to Arya Varna and Dasa Varna. The Dasas and Dasyus were conquered and treated as slaves. They came to be considered Sudras in the later period. Social classes were classified as warriors, priests, and common people. Sudras as a category of people appeared at the end of the Rigvedic period. Slavery was common and slaves were given as gifts to the priests, but there is no reference to wage labor. Horse-drawn chariots and bronze objects were possessed by a few, suggesting social distinction. Vedic society was largely egalitarian initially, and social distinctions emerged later. According to the Purusha Sukta of the Rigveda, the various varnas emerged thus: Brahmanas from the mouth, the Kshatriya from the arms, the Vaishya from the thighs, and the Sudra from the feet of Purusha when he was sacrificed. These social divisions are considered to have arisen towards the end of the early Vedic period. Various professional groups such as warriors, priests, cattle keepers, farmers, barbers are also mentioned. Panis were itinerary traders or perhaps caravan traders. Panis are also seen as enemies in some verses. Tribe and family. Kinship was the basis of the social structure of Rigvedic society. People were identified with specific clans, and the clans formed the tribe or jana. The term jana means tribe. It occurs in the Rigveda 21 times, but Janapada doesn't occur even once. The term vis, which refers to the common people, occurs 170 times, and they lived in gramas, meaning villages. The family, meaning griha, was the main social unit within the tribe. It was headed by the Grihapati, and his wife was known as Sapatni, and the family at that point of time was perhaps a joint family. Women. Women had a respectable position, but it is not possible to generalize about this. Society was essentially patriarchal, with a preference for male children and cattle. The birth of a son was preferred, perhaps because of the martial nature of the society, which required male members for their classes to establish dominance over the territories. Having 10 sons was considered as a blessing. Women attended assemblies and offered sacrifices. Marriage was common, but primitive practices were also continued. Polyandry seems to have existed, and widow remarriage was also known. People married at the age of 16 to 17, according to scholars, and there is little evidence of child marriage. Economy. Agriculture. Archaeological evidence points to the development of agriculture among the Rigvedic people. The plowshare is mentioned in the Rigvedas. The field was known as Kshetra, and the term Krishi referred to plowing. The terms Langla and Sura referred to plow, and the term Sita meant the furrow created by plowing. Water for irrigation was probably drawn from wells by cattle-driven water lifts using pulleys. They had knowledge of different seasons: sowing, harvesting, and thrashing. They cultivated barley, yabam, and wheat, godhuma. Pastoralism. Cattle rearing was an important economic activity for the Aryans, although they practiced agriculture. Cattle were considered wealth. The term for war in the Rigveda was gavisti, which means search for cows, which is the contemporary term goshti for factions as well. The donations to the priests were mainly cows and women slaves, but not land, which reveals the importance of pastoralism. There was no private property in land. Craft production. The Rigveda mentions artisans such as carpenters, chariot makers, weavers, and leather workers. Copper metallurgy was one of the important developments of this period. The term ayas in the Rigveda refers to copper and bronze. Karmara, smith, is mentioned in the Rigveda. Likewise, there are references to siri or yarn, indicating spinning which was done by women, and to carpenters, takshan. Weaving of clothes of wool is also referred to, and obviously it was necessary in the cold weather. Some of the crafts were full-time crafts involving specialists. Trade, exchange, and redistribution. Trading activities were limited, though traders were present during the early Vedic period. Panis are referred to as traders, and they were perhaps caravan traders. The word pan means barter, which was a mode of exchange. Nishka was a gold or silver ornament used in barter. A priest received 100 horses and 100 nishka as fee for sacrifices. The danas and dakshinas offered to people were means of redistributing resources. The dakshina was both a fee for a specific service and also a means of distributing wealth. The distribution of cows helped spread pastoral activities and economic production. Transport. Bullock carts, horses, and horse-drawn chariots were used for transport. There are references to the sea, meaning samudra, and boats, nau. Boats driven by 100 oars are mentioned. Polity and administration. The polity of the Rigvedic period was that of a tribal society. The chief of the tribe was the main political head, and he was called Rajan. The kings lived in multi-pillared palaces. They offered gifts of cattle, chariots, and horse ornaments and gold to the priests. Rajan was a hereditary chief. He was perhaps elected by the assembly called Samiti. The main duty of the king was to protect the tribe. He protected wealth, fought wars, and offered prayers on behalf of gods. The king had authority over the territory and people. Vedic society was militaristic. Bows, daggers, axes, and lances were the main weapons of war. Tributes and booty collected from war were redistributed by the king. There are also references to gift of dasas or slaves. The king Trasadasyu, the chief of the Purus, gave away 50 women as a gift. The chief was known as Gopa or Gopati, which means chief of cattle. The assemblies called Sabha, Samiti, Vidhata, and Gana are mentioned in the Rigveda. Sabha was the assembly of elders or the elites. Samiti was an assembly of people, and Vidhata was the assembly of tribe. They performed military and religious functions. Women attended the Sabhas and Vidhatas. The king sought the support of the Samiti and Sabha for its activities. There are debates about the exact nature of these assemblies and functions. Most of our understanding of the conditions of Vedic society depends upon the interpretations of various terms. Sometimes it is hard to reconstruct the original meaning. The Purohita or priest offered advice to the king. Vedic priests advised the kings, inspired them, and praised their deeds. In turn, they received rewards for their services. Senani was the chief of army. There is no evidence of tax collecting officers. Perhaps people made voluntary contribution called bali to the king. Some scholars say that bali was an imposed tax and not voluntary. There is no reference to the administration of justice. The officer who controlled the territory was called Brajapati. He held the heads of fighting groups called Gramini. Gramini was the head of the village and fighting unit. Vedic religion and rituals. Religion and rituals played an important role in Vedic society. In the Rigveda, the natural forces, sun, moon, rivers, mountains, and rains were defined as divinities. The religion was naturalistic and polytheistic. Indra was the most important god and he was called Purandara. Agni was seen as intermediary between God and people. Surya was a god who removed darkness. Ushas was a goddess of dawn. Aditi, Prithvi, and Sinibali are other goddesses. Varuna, the god of water, was next in importance. This god was the upholder of natural order. Soma was the god of plants, and the drink was named after him. Soma drink was part of the ritual, and the preparation of this intoxicating drink is explained in many hymns of Rigveda. Maruts was a god of strength. Interestingly, there are few references to Rudra or Shiva. Rituals were adopted as a solution to many issues and the problems of day-to-day life, and thus the priests had an important role in the society. Characteristics of society. In the early Vedic period, lineages and tribes constituted society, and the king had limited power. The various tribal groups of Aryans and non-Aryans fought to control the territories. Social divisions didn't take deep root, although the concept of Varna and Aryan identities existed. Pastoralism was predominant and cattle-centered clashes were common, although agriculture did play an important role. The archaeological sites suggest different types of craft production, including metal, carpentry, pottery, and clothes. So friends, we have come to an end of the session. I hope this audiobook will definitely help you. If you like the audiobook, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Ultimate Audiobook. I'll meet you with a new chapter. Till then, take care and bye bye everyone.